Is that true for us today? Oh, it doesn't hurt anybody. I'm not hurting anybody. If I don't hurt anybody, it must be okay. Right? I mean, how many times does that kind of stuff come up? If I'm not hurting anybody, then it has to be just me. It has to be okay. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Oh, that's just entertainment. Oh, it's just a TV program. Everything is permissible for me. And we get stuck in places where we say, well, if it's not a sin, it's okay. Well, I won't go to hell for it, so it'll be okay. Well, Paul says it's time to ask a different question. Not is it permissible, but is it beneficial? Is it the best? Is it what I need to be doing? See, you and I weren't meant to walk through life by the skin of our teeth. We're not meant to get just enough grace to pass muster. You and I are called to a relationship where Jesus says, I want to change you. I want to give you joy. I want to give you a life that is abundant, that is full, that you can look around and say, man, I'm living the best time of my life right now because I'm living with God. But we're not going to get it if we're living on the edge. I'm going to look and say, well, it's not wrong. Technically, I can get away with it. That's not going to cut it. That's not going to get us where God wants us to be. Paul says we want to say, everything is permissible for me, but he says not everything is beneficial. It is time that you and I stop looking to say, is this wrong? And start asking the question, is this right? Is this the best? Is this what's going to do what God wants it to do in my life? See, I don't want to sit there and go, oh, well, this isn't going to kill me fast, maybe just a little slow. I want to be in a place where I am living life because I am alive for what it is that Jesus has for me. Is all media bad? No. Is all media beneficial? No. And that's what we've got to begin to ask ourselves. Is this beneficial? Is this a blessing at this particular point in time? And if it's not, cut it off. Throw it away. Put it down. Bill's on a broken record over and over and over again. He keeps telling us, turn off. That's right. You know why? Because I think that's part of the next part of the question here. He goes on, he quotes again, everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. Well, he quotes it again. Does it mean that, sure, it's the same question that comes right back around, isn't it? Oh, there's no harm in it. Oh, it's permissible. It's not bad. You're just being over the top. Oh, it's not. Paul says it cuts to the question of who's in charge. Who's in charge? Man, I've looked at our challenges this month. And the first challenge was to what? Give up one form of media for one day. And I heard over and over again, do you know how hard that was? Do you know how hard that was? Now, I had somebody say, I did that, and the next day I didn't want to go back. Okay, then you know what my answer to that is? Don't go back. Don't go back. But do you know how much we struggle with putting down one form of media for one day? Who's in charge? Who's the master? Who's in control? Let's number our screens. I numbered mine, and I got to 400 and was embarrassed and stopped. And I'm talking to somebody, and they said, I got to 100 and was embarrassed and stopped. Oh, maybe my shame should be greater. I don't know. Who's in charge? Who's in control? How many of those times were beneficial? How many of those times were, it's not going to hurt me? I need to ask the question, don't I? Philippians 4. Is it true? Is it noble? Is it pure? Am I going to let God be in charge? Or am I just going to sort of skate through? It'll be okay. Paul says, I will not let anything master me. And with Paul, you can hear the words in the background, except Jesus Christ. Right? Because that's our resolution. 1 Corinthians 2:2. For I have resolved to know nothing while I was among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Right? That's what we're living for. That's what we're about. And so he goes, man, I want you to understand that. Verse 13, food for the stomach, stomach for the food. It's another quote. But God will destroy them both. The body is not meant for sexual immorality. It is meant for the Lord. He talks about sexual immorality there, but he also talks about our purity when we talk about media usage. You and I were created to be God's, and God has set us in a society to protect us. When he talks in this place, in his letter to Corinth, he will get over to chapter 12, and he will say, there are lots of different parts to the body. Lots of different pieces that are in here. But here's the way that it works. You and I were joined together so that we could be what it is that God wants us to be. And so how is God arming us? He tells us about the lies of the world, and he holds us accountable because he arms us with the people of God. See, you and I are a church that's meant to stand for something, that's meant to stand together. You and I aren't a church because God doesn't have anything to do on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. God doesn't choose this hour and say, I want you to come together here because I like the singing on Sunday morning. See, God calls us here together because he wants us to come and worship him, because he wants us to be connected. Because you and I have purpose, and that is to help each other look like Jesus. See, I look right here and say, man, here's Danny. And Danny's a good-looking kid, isn't he? He's not a kid. He's a young man. Have you seen him? He'll stand up here in a minute. Whew. He's a good-looking young man. Talented young man. And what is my purpose in Danny's life? It's to help him look like Jesus. It's to hold him accountable. It's to encourage him to do all things that are beneficial. But that's because I'm the preacher, right? Guess what Danny's role in my life is? It's exactly the same. We are part of the same body, part of the same family, part of the same purpose. And so I'm going to watch Danny, and I'm going to say, Danny, how's your media usage? You doing all right? How goes the battle? See, we need to ask questions like that of each other. How does it go? How's your media usage? Husbands, you need to ask your wives. Wives, you need to ask your husbands. We need to ask our friends, what are you watching? Is that good for you? Is that appropriate? See, that's the big lesson for me. I told you about Walker, right? Walker turned on the TV set, looked at me the other day and said, is this appropriate for me? So I'm watching a movie this week. Walker comes through, and I pause the movie. Click. And Walker looks at it and goes, that's not appropriate for me, is it? No, it's not. You keep moving. And so he moves on. I turn the movie back on. Sitting there watching the movie. And eventually I have to go, if it's not appropriate for Walker, why is it appropriate for me? Well, because I'm older, and I know how to judge that, and I know how to... It's permissible. But is it beneficial? See, I need to ask you. And you need to ask me. We need to be connected on this thing, don't we? God arms us with the people of God. So this week, here's the challenge. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to make one major change in your media usage. I want you to make some decision about the media that you use in your life. If you're using something and you say, that is not beneficial for me, then it's time to cut it out. Cut it out. But don't do that alone. I want you to cut it out, and then I want you to tell a friend. I want you to cut it out, and I want you to email me. I don't even know how to say that. I want you to cut it out, and I want you to email me. I want you to cut it out, and I want you to text somebody. I want you to cut it out, and I want you to be accountable. And I want you all to pray about it together. And I want you to talk about it together, and I don't want this to be a one-week deal. Make a change in your media usage that is beneficial to your life in Jesus. Can you do that with me? I got one person. That's the guy I'm going to call when I make my change, because he's the one that answered. Will you do that with me? Will you tell somebody about it? Yes. We have to be the people of God. We have to understand what's coming in. Garbage in, garbage out. Here's the great part about that. Jesus in, Jesus out.